Hi, I'm Bethany Zell. I am the Program Director for Healthy You at Calais Medical Center, and we are so excited to be continuing our community chats with Aroostook Mental Health Center. And I'm excited today to have Michelle Ferris, and she is the Program Director for Emergency Services at AMHC. Thank you, Michelle, for being here today.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm glad to partner.
Yeah, well, in the spirit of Mental Health Awareness Month, we really wanted to just kind of highlight some of the services that AMHC supplies to our communities and just talk a little bit about how the current pandemic is kind of changing things and how it's not changed some things and how maybe more resources are available or maybe changed a little bit or adapted to accommodate some of what we're dealing with right now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at AMHC as the Emergency Services Program Director?
So in terms of emergency services, we offer mobile crisis services, which basically is if somebody needed to be seen out in the community, if they were struggling, having a hard time, needed a little bit more than maybe what traditional services could provide. So whether that's therapy or case management. So if they need more support, or maybe they don't have any of those services. So crisis would step in and we would go out into the community and see folks face to face. And in terms of what's a crisis, it's really defined by the person and what they need. It's very subjective in that way. So what I might experience as a crisis, you might not, and vice versa. And so it really kind of depends on what that person needs. But essentially, our mobile crisis team would go out in the community and meet people where they're at. That could be in their home, it could be in one of our offices, it could be at an emergency department. A lot of people tend to go there thinking that's the only place that they can get help, but really we can come to you wherever you are in the community. We've met with people in their vehicle. We've met with people at Tim Hortons. It just depends on where that person is comfortable meeting. And we want to do that in a place that's least restrictive to them, right? So it's not really, you don't have to go to the emergency department, although a lot of people still think that you do. So that's one service that we have. And so we meet with folks face to face, and then we also assess what that person might need. So are there other services they might need? Are there other supports they might need? Try to get them connected to those services and supports. But then we're also assessing if, well, maybe the person needs a little bit higher level of care than just staying at home. It might not be safe enough at home, kind of thing. And so we might talk to folks about going to a crisis unit or even going to an inpatient unit if they needed that kind of emergency psychiatric treatment and medication. So it's really assessing what they need, supporting them through that moment, and then also offering what maybe a different level of care would look like.
So have you seen any kind of increase in some of these services as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that's going on?
So you would think, but actually no, it's been trending the other way. So when somebody tries to reach our mobile crisis team, all those requests have to go through the Maine Crisis Line. So if somebody needs that support, they call the Maine Crisis Line. And then the Maine Crisis Line, if the person is calling from one of our 3 counties that we cover, they'll send that to us and say, so-and-so's on the phone, they would like to be seen. And so the Maine Crisis Line has definitely seen a significant increase in people calling, but the amount of people actually wanting that face-to-face service has gone way down. And I think a lot of that's because of the fear and social distancing, and we can't, it's difficult to see people face-to-face right now. And so I think there's probably been this assumption that we're not open, we're not there to support people, but we've adjusted our service. We do still offer some face-to-face. So when we get a referral, we just do the typical CDC screening to see if the person is having any symptoms of potential COVID, and if anyone in their household might be sick or if they've traveled. And if it seems safe, we're still going into the community. We are still going into the emergency departments to see people. But if the person would prefer, we do offer a telehealth option. And so in that case, we would meet just like this through Zoom. We would set up a link, email it to the person, and then we would meet just like this and talk about what's going on and see what help we can offer this way. And for some people, I think that's been really great. They feel a little bit more secure with the COVID issue, and they're still getting their needs met. But then there's, I think, also some people who just aren't reaching out because they might not know that we can do this, or maybe they're not comfortable meeting this way. And so typically this time of year actually is one of our busier times, spring and fall. And so what makes me concerned is that just because COVID happened doesn't mean that people aren't going to be struggling in the spring and fall, especially if someone might have a chronic and persistent mental illness. And so it makes me very worried that people are just maybe stuck home, suffering in silence and suffering in isolation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So
I think that's one of the most important reasons that I really wanted to do this series too, was to make sure that people in our communities understand that they're not alone. And that, I mean, we're kind of in this unreal world, and, you know,
yes.
Dealing with depression or anxiety or some of these other mental health impacts in a regular world, it can feel overwhelming. And then you throw in all of this COVID-19 stuff behind the scenes that just makes it even more so. And so it's interesting that you say that your services may be a little underwhelmingly used at the moment, but I think, it's great that we have kind of a Maine state level crisis number that people, I know we've been really putting it out in full force, letting people know that's available around the clock. And then of course we've got that Warmline for the first response workers there, and
Yep.
That's all in place. So that's really cool. But what are some of the things, like maybe we have a loved one that's struggling or facing some kind of a crisis that maybe we don't really know, and maybe they don't even know that they're approaching a crisis. What are some of those signs and symptoms or things that might alert us to the fact that a loved one or someone we're sheltered at home with may be struggling in an area that we're not able to address or help with?
Yeah, a lot of those things are the same as what they were pre-COVID. It's just you might not see it because you don't see the person. And so, one, just the feelings of isolation can get to all of us after a while. We've definitely seen this wave of fear and panic and anxiety that people have, and COVID makes all of that worse. If someone seems like that they're displaying a sense of helplessness about what's going on around them. And again, COVID exacerbates that and makes it worse because COVID is out of all of our control. And so when people are doing things like, not really taking care of themselves, not getting dressed in the morning, not having the energy to get out of bed, loss of interest in things that they previously really enjoyed, having stressors in their life or a lot of relationship problems. And then what kind of brings it to the next level is when people start to have thoughts of harming themselves or harming others, thoughts that maybe they don't belong here or that they would be better off dead. And then, of course, then it kind of gets more risk as people start thinking about how they could harm themselves. And so COVID has really just made all of those things worse. When we talk about isolation, we're all stuck at home, right? When we talk about kind of like feeling a depressed mood and no energy to do anything and not getting up and getting dressed in the morning. Well, when you're stuck at home, it's easy to get into this rut of getting out of our routine and feeling very helpless about the circumstances. And so, all of those things are just made worse because of the current pandemic. So, and then of course, there's some folks where the world around them is already kind of altered if they have a chronic mental illness, like schizophrenia. And so, you layer the pandemic on top of that, and that level of kind of paranoia about the world around you is just exponentially worse. Or if you already have a lot of fear about physical health issues and how they're going to impact you, or if you have fears about even the government. I mean, the government's on the TV every day, right? It's all over the media. And so those things just really contribute to that fear and panic that some people may already experience on a daily basis. So again, I really suspect that people are just suffering by themselves, unfortunately, because those things aren't going to go away just because a pandemic is happening.
And I love that you brought up, the fear of the government too, because I mean, there's so many messages out there right now. And, if you're dealing with some kind of a mental health illness underlying all the stress and the anxiety that's being created, in the world through just the discussion of this topic so pervasively for so long. And then you throw in all of these different messages and mixed messages.
Yeah.
Wear a mask? Do we not wear a mask? Can we go to the store? Can we not go to the store? I mean, it's just got to be even more so overwhelming for those who are struggling.
And confusing. It's just like you said, the mixed messages are just so confusing. Who do you trust? Who can you? Who's giving you the truth? Who's not? And then now we're starting to see more of this talk about conspiracy theories and is the government lying to us? And it's just incredibly overwhelming and scary and very challenging to deal with on a good day right now.
Yeah. And I feel like it can become, you can become so hyper focused on it that you can almost watch too much news and listen to too many messages. And I know personally, I kind of got to a point where it was like, I just had to say, okay, this is what I'm going to commit to watching, and this is the frequency, and I just need to disconnect after that, because more than that is more than what I can personally handle. And so I feel like, I don't know if everyone is kind of settling into that acceptance that we can't process all of these messages being sent at us, and just kind of looking for those few trusted resources that we know that we can go to and trust, and kind of keep our intake to a minimum so as not to get overwhelmed in the anxiety or fear categories, because you're right, a lot of it is, or most of it is completely outside of our control. And that's where a lot of crisis stems from, that lack of control.
Yes. Yeah. And feeling like you don't have any options, that there's no other solutions. I'm so glad you brought up the point about kind of limiting your own personal exposure and how much you're looking up information about these things. It was about 3 weeks in that I had my moment of, I can't keep doing this. I just felt like I was spiraling down personally. And I, working from home, I've got small kids, I'm trying to manage work, and then all the information coming at me. And I personally, for my own mental health and my own well-being, I had to really limit what information I was looking up. Where was I getting it from? So I found, the spot that I personally felt like information I could trust. And then I look at that maybe once a day. And actually now it's about every other day. And that really helped me a lot. Social media, it's all over social media. And so limiting your exposure even on social media, because if all you're doing is kind of sitting at home, scrolling through your phone or surfing on the internet, it's just all around you. And so it's really important to set limits to take care of yourself, because it will definitely impact your mood.
So are there any other services or anything else at AMHC that's kind of been adapted in this area as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, or is everything mostly working as it was pre-pandemic with just a few adaptations?
Yeah, so almost all of our services are still available. I think what we've adjusted is to try to account for social distancing. And so our outpatient offices, while they are still open, have a lot less clients coming to our site. for services, and we're doing a lot more telehealth, again, just like this. So the majority of therapy that we're offering now is just like this. Case management is a mix. It could be telehealth like this, or it could be your case manager still coming to see you depending on what your needs are. If you needed to go to some appointments or you need support getting something done out in the community. Our substance use disorder services, same kind of thing. It's a combination of telehealth and then also still offering some face-to-face groups while trying to also social distance. So we tried to strike a balance between making sure we're still available to folks in our community, because that's really our mission and our priority. And then also balancing that with our staff safety to make sure that we're delivering in the service in a way that everyone can still stay physically healthy in terms of COVID, so that we can still be here to offer the service. Because if everyone, ends up getting sick, then we can't necessarily be there to offer the service. So we've really tried to strike that balance. Same thing with our peer centers. While we don't have, people aren't coming into the centers right now, it's a lot of phone work. If somebody needs anything, just pick up the phone and call. And then also transitioning to a lot of online format support groups. And then I haven't mentioned, but we also have our crisis units that are available. Those are still open and very busy, very active actually. We have our children's crisis unit in Fort Fairfield and our adult unit in Presque. We also have a children's crisis unit in Calais. And what we're doing differently there is just screening when people make a referral, making sure people aren't coming in sick, and trying to social distance in the facility. So all those services are definitely still available. We've just adjusted them a little bit to make sure that they're still accessible.
And so just to clarify, the crisis units, if people are feeling like they need that service, that's accessed through that 888 Maine crisis number.
Actually, people can call our crisis units directly. So we try to have less barriers to get into those facilities, so people can self-refer places. So if you have a child that you're worried about, all you have to do is call our Fort Fairfield unit directly. So if you're the parent or guardian, just calling and kind of giving them an overview of what's going on and why you're concerned. And same with our adult unit. The client themselves can call, or someone can call on their behalf, as long as the client, of course, gives permission and that's what they want to do. Both of those facilities are voluntary, so people have to want to go and want to participate in the programming. But there's short-term stabilization. So maybe it's too much to stay at home right now and you need a few days away or a week away to kind of get back to feeling like yourself. And there's staff on site there 24/7 that offer support counseling and connecting people with resources that they might need, or making referrals for follow-up services when they go back home.
Wonderful. And we'll definitely make sure to link and give some of those phone number details in the description of this video on our YouTube channel, so that people have all that information kind of in one place. So do you have anything else you want to add about anything else happening at AMHC or specific to crisis response that would be helpful to the people in our communities at this time?
I think the number one thing is just call. If you're not sure, even for yourself, if you're feeling isolated and you want to talk to somebody, just call. If you have someone that you're concerned about, but you're not sure how to talk to them or how to approach them, just call. We can talk through what might work for you in terms of showing your concern for that person. That first call, that old saying, like, it's always the hardest. It's the hardest, but also the easiest. You just have to dial the number, and there's another person on the end of the line that will help walk you through what your options might be and what the next steps are. So really, really the message of not wanting people to feel like they have to be out there suffering in isolation and alone. There are still people around, everybody cares, but people might not be able to see you to say, hey, how are you? So reaching out, just calling.
For sure. Well, we'll definitely make sure to get those numbers accessible. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing this great information. I'm really thankful for AMHC and all the work that you guys are doing over there just to help and be available. I mean, even in the midst of a pandemic, people can still get the help they need. They may not even struggle on a normal day, but we're all going to be struggling at some point throughout this. If it continues much longer, I know I've already struggled in some of the you've talked
Yes.
about meeting,
Yes.
just over the last couple months. And so we're not alone. You're not alone. This is a very unusual circumstance that's impactful to every single person in this world. So, reach out if you really need that help. I love that we have someplace local that people can reach out and see a friendly face, and probably even more so than maybe they would have if they had just called in before. They might have the opportunity to access those friendly faces right from their living room, which is
Yes.
removes at least some of that barrier of getting to a place. Sometimes that can ease that transition too. So thank you, and we'll definitely get to share this information out to our communities, and we thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Take care.